I picked her up from the apartment she shared with two other girls, and we went out for dinner, drinks, and dancing. She seemed a little nervous when she got into the car, and I assumed it was because it was the first time I had picked her up instead of meeting her at the agreed-upon location. I could tell from her behavior that she seemed afraid that we might be seen together, and I asked her about it as we pulled away from the curb. It's because of my father. He asks Gwen and Harriet about what I do and who I meet. Gwen even said he was paying part of her rent so she could look after me. If he's paying Gwen, he's probably paying Harriet too. Why is he behaving this way? He's worried that I'll do something stupid and ruin my life. From the very beginning, he was against me moving out of the hostel. What did you do to make him think you might make a mistake? It's not what I did, it's what my sisters did. And what did they do? They dropped out of school and married guys my father considers fortune hunters. He says Amos and Jack only married my sisters for their trust funds. Trust funds? My grandparents set up trust funds for all three of their grandchildren. Do you have a trust fund? We've been dating for over 2 months now, and why didn't I know about this before? I also think Dad is right about Amos and Jack, so I don't tell the boys about it. I want to be sure that they love me, and not the $2 million that I will receive either after graduating from college or after getting married. So, if your father finds out about me, will he think that I am a fellow fortune hunter? Is that why I never met your parents? Yes, and yes. Well, I can calm both you and your father. If our relationship gets to the point where I propose to you, and I'm not afraid to say that this is very likely, I will sign a prenuptial agreement that suits your father. Would you do this? Certainly. I don't need your money. I have my own trust fund that I will receive when I turn 30. It's half the size of yours, but that's enough. I didn't know that. My father explained to me from the very beginning about women who can hunt for money, so, like you, I prefer to remain silent about it. I think our relationship is at a point where it's obvious that neither of us is after the other's money. I still don't want my father to find out about us. Because of what my sisters did, he will try to separate us. It won't happen, baby. It just won't happen. We had dinner at Duke's Steakhouse and then went to Black Onyx for drinks and dancing. We were there for about an hour. I had 2 drinks and Connie had 4. We were enjoying the evening, dancing, and then my phone rang. I answered and told Connie that I had an important call to take. I headed to the men's room and saw Charlie there. Ready? I asked. He smiled and replied, "Everything is fine. See you in a few minutes." He left, and I went into the booth, sat down, and took out of my pocket a crossword puzzle that I had cut out from the morning newspaper. It took me 12 minutes, and I decided that was enough. I walked back to the table and saw Charlie and Connie on the dance floor. I sat down at the table and began to wait. When the music ended, they returned to the table, and Charlie frowned when he saw me. "It's a private party, buddy. Get lost." "Yes, it's a private party, and I don't remember inviting you." "Did you invite him, Connie?" "No, but he was quite persistent, and it was easier to dance with him than to make a scene." "Hey, I bought you 2 drinks. And that got you 3 dances, which is more than you could have expected." She sat down, and I said to Charlie, "Thank you for entertaining her while I was talking on the phone. You can go, now I'll handle this myself." "Bitch." He hissed to Connie, but when he saw me starting to get up, he quickly turned and left. I sat down again and said, "I'm sorry I left you for so long. There were problems at work, and it seemed like I was the only one who could tell me where to look for a solution. I should be angry, but I'm not. I like to dance, and he was a very good dancer, and he had excellent taste in choosing his prey. Yes, there is such a thing. We had another drink and danced a couple of times, and then she said she wasn't feeling well, and I suggested we call it a day. She passed out when we got to my apartment. I dragged her inside, and a storm of emotions flared up between us: anger, passion, despair. Everything happened quickly and chaotically, as if we were trying to drown out the inner pain with each other. At some point, I felt satisfied, as if I had achieved my goal, but there was still a residue. After each of our interactions, I took care of her comfort, hoping that the consequences of this night would be significant and change the course of events as I desired. There was an element of luck involved, and I spent a significant amount of money to improve my chances. That, and a little lie. I would commission private investigators to track down Gwen and Harriet, instructing them to find out as much as possible about them. When I received the report, I chose Harriet as my target. She came from a poor family, went to school on several scholarships and student loans, and was ambitious. One day I sat down with her, lied to her several times, and offered her $5,000 to help me, and she snapped it up. Connie began to show signs of awakening when I was already nearby. We spent time together, completely immersed in the moment and enjoying each other's closeness. Our interaction was filled with mutual desire and trust, and I tried to respond to her initiative in order to please her. Despite the fatigue, we were in no hurry to finish, allowing each moment to stretch out and be remembered. When the energy began to fade, I did everything to make her feel satisfied and happy. We ended this evening in a state of complete peace, leaving each other with warm memories of the time spent. I got up, left her on the bed, and went to the kitchen to make some coffee. Connie entered the room 20 minutes later. She wore a dress, but was barefoot. The expression on her face was not the least bit pleasant. "You bastard," she growled. "How could you do this to me? I thought I meant something to you." "Wow, little girl, I didn't do anything you didn't want. It was you who slid across the seat to sit next to me. It was you who reached for my lightning." "I don't." "Damn it, you didn't do it. It surprised the hell out of me, but I definitely wasn't going to stop you. This is something I've wanted to do since the day I met you, and I certainly wasn't going to say no once you started it." "I never." "Oh yes, you did it. You showed such unexpected initiative that I almost lost control of the situation. I'll tell you one thing from the very beginning, it was clear that you were not as naive as you tried to seem. All these stories about innocence and purity before the wedding turned out to be just words, and I finally understood it. That guy you were dancing with when I came back after the call offered you a drink, didn't he? Actually, two. He obviously decided that you were alone and did not expect me to return. He had his own plans, but I ruined them. And guess what? I don't regret anything. This made me realize that there are no more barriers between us." She looked at me silently, thinking about what I had just told her, and then said, "You need to take me to the pharmacy so I can get my pill for the next morning. I was not protected, and I am in my fertile period. You don't need pills after your morning dose. One of the things I needed to discuss with you when I proposed was how you felt about me not having children. I can't have them because I'm infertile. This is the reason for my divorce. My wife found out I couldn't get pregnant and left me." "How did you know?" "When we failed to get pregnant after 3 years of trying, we both got tested. Based on all the tests, I have no chance of producing offspring. I never thought about children. I'd probably make a lousy mother anyway, so I guess I'll just say yes." "Yes to what?" "In a roundabout way, you just proposed to me, right?" "Yes, I think I did it, don't I?" She pulled the dress over her head and dropped it to the floor. She was naked below, struck a pose, and said, "Does this give you any ideas?" Connie was determined to graduate before she got married, which meant another year before that happened, which was fine with me. Once we started making love, Connie and I had sex 2 or 3 times a week, which gave me a much better chance of making her belly swell. I lied about being infertile, and I lied because it caused my divorce. I wasn't actually getting a divorce, but Connie didn't need to know that. 2 months passed, and one night Connie called me and said we needed to talk. I asked her what about it, and she said she couldn't talk about it on the phone, so I told her I'd meet her at the village in 3 blocks from her house. She was there when I arrived. I sat down opposite her and asked, "How are you?" "We have a problem. I am pregnant." I looked at her silently for about a minute and then said, "I don't understand what our problem is. I'm infertile, Connie, so I think you need to call one of your lovers and tell him the news." I got up and left the restaurant. It was a shame, actually, because I had strong feelings for Connie. They were strong enough that under other circumstances I might well have married this girl. The problem was that my hatred of her father was much stronger than the feeling I felt for Connie, and given his social position in society, having an illegitimate grandson would cause him great embarrassment. Nothing like this ever happened to the Smythe Barringtons. Unmarried mother. Oh, what a shame about all this. Reaching this point was not easy and expensive, but quality revenge takes a lot of time and money. I had to hire a private investigator to find out everything there was to know about Constance Allison Smythe Barrington, and then, using that information, I had to set up a meeting with her and get her interested enough in me to go on a date with me. When I succeeded, and we had been dating for 2 months, I had to assign a detective to find out everything he could about Connie's roommates. Once I settled on Harriet, I had to persuade her to give me extremely personal information about Connie that the private investigator could not obtain. One day, while Connie was visiting her parents, whom I had not yet met, I approached Harriet and told her that I desperately needed her help. I told her I was hopelessly in love with Connie, and although Connie swore she loved me, I wondered why she never let me meet her parents. Harriet told me that Connie's parents always found a way to end any relationship Connie had with a guy. Their position was that none of the guys Connie chose had the proper social standing or were suitable for her. They pushed her into a relationship with the son of one of their friends, but Connie couldn't stand the guy. If I can get her pregnant, she'll have to marry me. Her parents be damned. Then I offered her $5,000 if she would help me. She hesitated for a few seconds before saying that she didn't like either of Connie's parents and would help me in any way she could. I learned from Harriet that the pill was causing problems for Connie, so she didn't use it and decided she didn't need it anyway since she didn't intend to be sexually active until she was married. Harriet confided to me that Connie wasn't particularly interested in sex at all. Once upon a time, she had sex with 4 different guys, and she got nothing out of it. The most important information I received from Harriet was information about Connie's menstrual cycle. With this information, I was able to plan for Connie's fertile times. I used this information, and as a result, Robert Connor Ellsworth Smythe Barrington became the grandfather of an illegitimate child, a stain on the Smythe Barrington name. The chain of events that led to Connie's pregnancy began almost 12 years ago when I met Samantha Sue Catron on the first day of school at the beginning of 10th grade. Tall, 5'9", with raven black hair that fell to the middle of her back, she instantly caught my attention. I didn't get a chance to talk to her that morning, but when lunchtime came, I saw her sitting alone in the school cafeteria. I walked over to her desk and asked if I could join her. She looked up at me and shrugged, so I sat down and introduced myself. She looked around the room and saw at least a dozen empty tables, and then she looked at me and said, "Why are you here?" In a nutshell, I'm here because you're here. Can you explain this? I've lived here all my life and I've never seen you before, which means, at least in my opinion, none of the other guys here have ever seen you before. You know what you look like, and you know guys will flock to you like flies to a pile of sugar. I wanted to be first in line. She looked at me with a smile and then said, "What makes you think that being first in line will get you somewhere? Maybe the 10th guy in line is the one I'll choose. I know all the guys in the 2 classes ahead of us and the class behind us, and I'm here to tell you that I'm much better than all of them." Pretty confident, aren't you? Do you want your boyfriend to be someone worse? You have a point, but I'm new in town and don't know many people yet. I think I'll wait a little while before choosing my guy, but I'll put your name on the list from which I'll choose. You will need to know who will be on the list, so how about you start the process by coming with me tonight? No way. My parents only allow me to meet on Fridays and Saturdays. Okay then, will you come with me this Friday? I can. We talked, and I found out that her dad got a promotion that took them from Dallas to our city, and they were only here for 5 days. She was an only child and was planning to go to college and become a lawyer. She found out that I was also an only child and was going to college and become a civil engineer like my father. Our date on Friday was at the arcade, and I had a great time and so did she. But when I asked her to go to the movies with me on Saturday, she said Phil Snyder had already asked her. and she was going to go ice skating with him. I was disappointed, but I asked her out on a date the following Friday. Al Moore. How about Saturday? Chuck Olson. Friday after this? Billy Holbrook. Saturday after that. I would love to. This set the rhythm for the next year. I'd take Sammy out on dates, ask her out again, and find out that the next weekend or 2 weekends were already booked. But I persisted. Other guys gradually backed out, either didn't find what they were hoping for, or didn't want to wait 2 or 3 weeks for the next date. By the start of 11th grade, I had a date almost every week, and by spring break, I was the only one she was dating. She went to Dallas to spend the summer with her grandparents, and when we started 12th grade, I asked her to officially date me, and she agreed. I took the leather sweater I had out of my bag and handed it to her. Her smile was so bright when she took it from me that it could be seen from the space station. I know it's a cliché, but we lost our virginities the night of the prom, and since that night we've made love every chance we get. The disaster occurred during our second year of college. She told me she was pregnant. Apparently, some medicine she was taking for a cold had neutralized her birth control pills. The news didn't upset me because to me, it meant that I would have to marry her sooner rather than later. The downside was that I would have to drop out of college and get a job. My parents were very angry with me, as it was always their goal that I would be the first on both sides of the family to get a degree. Sammy's parents just shrugged their shoulders and gave her $100 to pay for the blood tests, license, and registration with the magistrate, and we got married. I got a job at the gas company, and it was decided that there was no point in Sammy dropping out of college and taking a job because in 7 months she would have to leave her job to have a baby. She studied on scholarships, so it wouldn't be a financial burden for us. I had a college fund that my parents and both sides of my grandparents put money into, and everyone agreed, my parents reluctantly, that I could take the money even if college was now out of the picture. I used it to rent and furnish a 2-bedroom apartment and still had $12,000 in the bank to put aside for unexpected expenses. Our goal was to help Sammy finish college, and then she would get a good job and help pay for my college, and then, both educated and with good jobs, we would start living the American dream. In an effort to take on as many classes as possible before the baby was born, Sammy began carrying a very heavy workload, including evening and some weekend classes. She was in her 7th month when God decided to lie in wait for us. I was in a deep hole with Bert Ellsworth replacing a gas line when my boss yelled at me to get out of the hole. I got out, and he told me to hurry up and get in his truck. He started the truck and then said he had to take me to the hospital. I just received a call from the office. Your wife was in an accident and is in the hospital. What's happened? How is she? I don't know anything, Guy. They simply told me that she was there and that I should quickly go to her. We arrived, and I hurried inside to find that Sammy had fallen down the stairs while rushing to class. She felt sharp pain and began to bleed and was rushed to hospital. The fall caused a miscarriage, and the doctor told me there were complications and Sammy would no longer be able to have children. It was sad, and this was clear to me from the expressions of pity that all the nurses and assistants showed me. Everything has changed. Sammy dropped out and just lay around the apartment and did nothing, and by that I mean she didn't do anything at all. She didn't clean the apartment. She didn't cook. She didn't care about herself and had nothing to do with me. She didn't talk to me and stayed away from me, which was not easy in a 2-room apartment. I kept asking her what was wrong, and she kept saying, "There's nothing wrong with me, damn it. Just leave me alone." I put up with this for 3 weeks and then decided that we needed to find out everything to the end. When I came home from work, Sammy was gone. When she didn't come home by 10 o'clock, I started calling around and found out that she was with her parents. Her mother told me that Sammy didn't want to talk to me. What did you do with her? I didn't do a damn thing. And then I told her what was happening. Give me a couple of days with her, and I'll find out what's wrong. It turned out that Sammy suffered from postpartum depression. My health insurance from work covered treatment for us, and Sammy gradually came around and life got better for us. There were some difficult moments, but we were able to overcome them. Sammy decided she would not return to school and began looking for a job. She found a job at Barrington Industries. She started as a secretary and after 6 months was promoted to administrative assistant to the director of marketing. The money was good, but I didn't really like the job. She required late evenings and sometimes Saturdays as she had to attend some marketing events with her boss. I didn't like it, but I didn't feel like I could do anything about it at the time. It was still too close to where she was recovering, and I didn't want to do anything that would cause her to take a step back or two. A year after her promotion, my life fell apart. Sammy told me she needed to go to a marketing strategy seminar with her boss for the weekend. It was held in Dallas, and she flew out on Friday and would be back on Sunday around 7 p.m. She said that while she was in Dallas, she would be visiting relatives on Saturday night, so I shouldn't worry if I called her hotel and couldn't reach her. She was really excited about it because it could lead to another promotion. And we need money, baby. The transmission in my car started acting up, and the last guy I talked to said it would cost $900 to $1,800 to fix. I didn't like it, and we didn't really need the money because I still had $12,000 in the bank for emergencies. But again, I didn't want to risk making her feel depressed again. She left for work on Friday morning after kissing me goodbye and saying, "I'll miss you, baby. Get ready for a very horny Sammy when I get home." I was busy while she was gone, and when she came back on Sunday night, she was really horny, and I ended up falling asleep due to being tired, and then she ruined me again on Monday night. On Tuesday, when I came home from work, I found a large manila envelope under the windshield of my car. I opened it, and my heart almost stopped. There were 6 photos of Sammy along with a note that said, "You don't deserve this, dude. Get rid of the girl of easy viability." The photos showed Sammy having sex with 4 men. In 2 of the photos, she was with 3 guys at the same time. I recognized 2 of these men. I met them at her company's Christmas party. One was the marketing director, and the other was the owner of the company, Robert Connor Ellsworth Smith Barrington. I sat in the car for almost an hour, looking at the photos and remembering all the late nights and Saturdays Sammy spent with the marketing director. By the time I got home, my blood was boiling. When I arrived, I found that Sammy was not at home. The light on the answering machine blinked, and I listened to the messages. The first was from some group supporting the ballot measure. Had no idea what it was about because I deleted it as soon as I realized what it was. The second was from Sammy. "Sorry for the short notice, baby, but an important client has unexpectedly flown into town and we need to meet him. I'll be late, but the fridge is full of leftovers. I'll make up for it when I get home. Take some vitamins. Love you. Bye." Lying bastard, I thought, deleting the message. Damn it, with your boss again. Then a thought occurred to me. Maybe she's not with the boss, maybe with a client, maybe with both. Although, maybe there will be another ambush with these 4 guys I saw in the photographs. So what? It didn't matter anymore. I took the time to gather everything I wanted and move it into my truck, then poured myself a stiff drink and settled down to wait for Sammy at home. Sammy walked through the door at 10 o'clock that evening and found me, drink in hand, on the couch. "Oh, wonderful. You're still awake," she said, coming up, leaning over and kissing me. She sat down next to me and I said, "Take care of the client." There was a slight hint of anger in my voice, and she noticed this, saying, "Don't be like that, baby. This is my job." "Oh, yes? Are you good at your job?" "Probably not so bad. My salary was increased several times." "I know. I saw some of these increases, and the ones I didn't were obvious." She looked at me confused, so I took the envelope, pulled out the photos, flipped through them, and chose one of Barrington standing horny and watching 3 other men having sex with Sammy at the same time. I handed her the photo and said, "I can see that Barrington was horny, and although I don't see the other 3, I know that they too must have been horny to do what they do." I handed her a picture of the marketing director busy with her butt and said, "I don't see that either, but you and I both know that he was on top at that moment." I handed her 4 more photographs and added, "You can put them in the album next to our wedding photos." This way, you'll have something to remind you of tonight. Goodbye, Sammy. I stood up and walked to the door while she screamed. Wait, Bobby, don't go. You don't understand. It was just a job. The closing door muffled her words. Please, Bobby, we need. I drove until I came across a motel where I rented a room for a couple of nights. Tomorrow, I will start looking for a new place to live. I had about 2 weeks of unused vacation, so I called the shift supervisor in the morning and said I needed 3 days for a family emergency. When I left Sammy, I turned off the phone because it was ringing and our home number flashed on the screen. I knew she would keep calling until I answered. When I turned it back on to call work, I saw 14 missed calls and 7 voicemails, all of them from Sammy. I deleted them all and decided to turn on my phone every couple of hours to check for messages that weren't from her. The morning turned out to be productive. I went to the bank and emptied my accounts. If Sammy needs money, it's too bad for her. Let her go to hell. I looked at 2 apartments. One was within my means, and I signed an agreement for a 1-room apartment. Then I stopped at Goodwill to look for furniture. I was lucky enough to find a bed frame, kitchen table with 2 chairs, recliner chair, and TV stand for a good price. I bought a box spring and a mattress at Mattress Factory that was enough to move and start a new life. By 6 o'clock in the evening, everything was in place, and all that remained was to buy groceries. On the way, I checked my phone several times, but there were only messages from Sammy, which I immediately deleted. I stopped for dinner at the Village Inn before going to Safeway. The phone was again full of messages from Sammy, but one was from my mom. I called her back, and she asked what was going on. Samantha called here several times. The poor girl is beside herself with worry because she can't contact you. She can't contact me because I don't want to talk to her, I said, and told my mother why. This can't be true, Bob. There must be some misunderstanding. Sammy loves you and would never do something like that to you. I have photographs, Mom, with 4 different men. It's over between me and Sammy. I called the landlord and informed him that I had moved out and would not be renewing my lease at the end of the month. He said he should contact Samantha to see if she would be willing to keep the apartment. I went to another bank and opened an account using the money I had withdrawn from my old account. Then, even though I had a 3-day vacation, I stopped by work to remove Samantha from my health insurance and remove her from the corporate life insurance beneficiary list, replacing her with my parents. I also transferred my direct deposit paycheck to the new bank account and then went out to grab something to eat. When I checked my phone, I found many missed messages and voicemails, all of them from Samantha. I decided to call back and end this conversation. The secretary said that Mrs. Walton had gone to lunch with Mr. Barrington and Mr. Stedman and asked if I would like to leave a message. I grinned and said, "Tell her that her future ex-husband is glad to know that she continues to receive the same raises that she told me about." I hung up the phone, headed to Kohl's to buy a few things to furnish my new home, and then stopped at Walmart and bought myself a big TV. That evening, I cooked my first dinner as a recently separated husband. After checking my phone, I saw that Samantha was still trying to contact me and decided to take a chance. I assumed that she would be at home and not earning another raise. She answered the 3rd call. "Hello? What do you want, Samantha?" "We need to talk, Bobby. You have the wrong idea about what happened. I'm not blind, Samantha. It is absolutely impossible to misunderstand what I saw in these photographs. But you don't know why, Bobby. This is what we need to talk about." "No, Samantha, we have nothing to talk about. The reason doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you cheated on me. You had sex with other men behind my back and constantly lied to me. You're not stupid, Samantha. You knew perfectly well how I would take it if I found out. You remember how it pissed me off when you dated other guys back in school. How did you think I would react when I found out that you became a prostitute? Or maybe the word girl for the night would be more accurate, because girls for the night do this for money, and you got a raise by spreading your legs. No, Samantha, we have nothing to talk about. I have an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow, and hopefully with his help, I can get a quick divorce and get rid of you." Divorce? Oh God, no, Bobby, not this. Please tell me. I hung up and turned off the phone. My visit to lawyer Jared Hooper was a real shock. I knew nothing about divorce, and what I learned about our state's no-cause divorce laws was a real eye-opener. The fact that Samantha could cheat on me with several men and it would not matter in court simply unsettled me. The fact that I would probably have to pay her child support because she made almost half as much as I did seemed like a reward for her cheating and a punishment for me for resenting it. The fact that she would get half of all the property didn't really bother me because we didn't have much. Furniture in the apartment, my truck, her car, and of course, the money in our bank account. Even though I transferred all the funds to an account registered only in my name, the court will still oblige me to give her half. In addition, the lawyer said that the odds of me paying her legal fees if she decided to contest the divorce were 70 to 30 in her favor. It seemed terribly unfair. The lawyer noted only one positive point. We didn't have children, which means I won't have to pay child support. Oh, well, at least something good, I thought. The only consolation was that all this information was free, since the lawyer provided the first consultation without payment. I decided to think it over and look for alternative options. I've heard about quick divorces in Reno, so it might be worth looking into. Or maybe just don't get a divorce. Use the money that would have been spent on the divorce to go back to college. I liked my job at the gas company, but the best I could achieve there was to become a foreman or a shift supervisor, and even that would take 10 to 15 years. After visiting the lawyer, I went to lunch and checked my phone. There were again messages from Samantha, which I immediately deleted, but one voice message intrigued me. Good morning, Mr. Walton. My name is Rob Barrington, and I would appreciate it if you could call me back. I'd like to discuss something that could be mutually beneficial for both of us. He left a callback number and added that he hoped for my quick response. I must admit, I was damn curious about what one of my wife's lovers wanted to discuss with me, and I almost called him. A little. But I didn't. I knew that he would want to meet in person, and I also knew that if I met in person, the first thing I would do would land me either in jail or in the electric chair. In the afternoon, I went to college and learned what it takes to re-enter. At dinner that night, I had already made up my mind. I was going back to college. I would have to take evening classes, which meant giving up overtime, which would allow me to increase my salary, but it was necessary. It wasn't that hard at first, because I still had $12,000 left from my old school fund. The next day, I returned to work to find that Samantha had called and left about a dozen messages. I told Sarah at the front desk that my wife and I had separated and asked her not to receive any more messages from Samantha. I still kept my phone off and checked my messages a couple times a day. Every day I received from 12 to 18 missed calls and voice messages from my wife, but sometimes there were others among them. There were 2 more messages from Barrington and a couple from Samantha's parents. I was really nice to them and probably should have called them, but if I did, they would want to know what was going on, and I couldn't explain it to them. I made a mistake. I kept deleting everything that came from Samantha, but I didn't think of other ways she could have gotten to me, so I didn't notice the car that was following me home from work. I pulled into the lot, parked, got out of the car, and walked to my door, unaware that I was being followed until I stopped to get my key. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw Samantha. She smiled at me and said, "Hi, darling." I ignored her, turned around, opened the door, and began to walk inside, intending to slam the door in her face. I think she saw this coming because she rushed forward and pushed me. I stumbled and flew into the apartment, and she quickly followed and closed the door behind her. "Now we can talk," she said. I said nothing, took off my coat, and hung it up. Then he went to the refrigerator, took out a beer, and, opening it, heard Samantha's question. "And there is one for me." "No, I have just enough to last me this evening. I don't have beer for girls of easy virtue." "I'm not a girl of easy virtue. I did it for us." "How could your sex with men help us?" "Damn it, Bobby, I didn't throw any naughty parties. You're forgetting that I've seen photos of you with 3 men at the same time, and by any definition that's sex with a group of men. And I don't see how that could help us. I didn't mean it, Bobby. Mr. Barrington took me to lunch, slipped something into my drink, and then let two other guys use me while he filmed it. He said he'll send you a copy of the video if I don't take care of a few of his clients. The next day he said he liked me, and if I agreed to be his girlfriend, he would destroy the tape and give me $25,000 for a down payment on a house. I wanted to tell you that I won money in the lottery. You weren't supposed to find out anything. It was for us, Bobby, our own home. So, you really are a girl of easy virtue. This is exactly what girls of easy virtue do. They sleep with men for money. I did it for us, Bobby, to get out of this cramped apartment and live in a house where we could raise children and be happy. You can't have children anymore, or have you already forgotten about it? We could adopt, Bobby. We could still be a family. I love you, Bobby. These men meant nothing to me. They were just a means to hold out for 6 months and get money for our house. Honestly, Bobby, they meant nothing to me. You are the only man I love and want to be with. The problem, Samantha, is that I don't want to be with you anymore. Your story doesn't add up. 6 months and you'll get the money. You were there for over a year and a half. Seeing you accept men killed every feeling I ever had for you. I hate even to look at you. Just get out of here and leave me alone. You're not serious, she said, taking off her blouse and skirt. She was ready for this. There was no bra or panties under her clothes. She stood in front of me completely naked and smiled. Tell me that you hate to look at this. I looked at her for several long seconds, trying to collect my thoughts. She smiled, spreading her arms wide, as if inviting him to a hug. However, her smile quickly faded when my actions did not go according to the expected scenario. She took a few steps back, pressing herself against the door, her gaze filled with confusion and shock. I opened the door and, grabbing her hand, helped her out the threshold. She was too stunned to say anything. I then threw her clothes away without turning around or saying a word. "Just leave me alone," I said coldly, slamming the door in her confused face. Silence reigned in the room, broken only by the echo of my own thoughts. I slammed the door and locked it. Then he took his beer, downed it in one gulp, and began cleaning up the mess he made. I think my words and actions got through to Samantha because the calls to my phone stopped. The next 3 days flew by, and then one evening, while I was watching TV, there was a knock on the door. Thinking it might be Samantha, I looked through the peephole. But it wasn't Samantha, it was a policeman. I opened the door and saw 2 policemen. One of them asked, "Mr. Walton?" "Yes." "Your wife is Samantha Sue Walton?" "Yes." "What's the matter?" "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your wife died in an accident some time ago." I stood there stunned as he asked me to go with them to the hospital. "To the hospital? You said she died." "This is true. She died in the emergency room. We need you, as the next of kin, to confirm her identity." It really was Samantha. I asked them what happened. She walked out of Farrell's Bar and Grill and stepped off the sidewalk in front of the truck. According to a blood test taken at the hospital when she was admitted, she was well over the legal blood alcohol level. Witnesses said it seemed like she didn't know what she was doing. "Was everything okay between you and your wife?" "Why are you asking about this?" 2 witnesses said it looked like she deliberately stepped in front of the truck. Samantha's father was overseas on business, and her mother was hysterical and forced to take sedatives when she heard the news, so the funeral arrangements fell on my shoulders. Her father returned home in time for the funeral, and Samantha's mother was also there, but still under the influence of medication. After the funeral, my father reminded me that I needed to go to his office and fill out paperwork. "What documents?" "You must apply for death insurance." It slipped from my mind. My father was an insurance agent, and when Samantha and I got married, he talked us into buying insurance policies on each other. We had a $125,000 policy that provided double the death benefit in case of accidental death. I remembered that I also had a $25,000 policy as part of the benefits package provided by the gas company where I worked. This policy also provided double benefits in the event of an accident. In addition, Samantha said that she also had insurance provided by her employer. The next day, I went to the old apartment and moved all of Samantha's things into storage. I decided to wait until her mother recovered and then discuss with her what to do with her things. When I was done, I headed to my dad's office and filed insurance claims. The insurance companies associated with my and Samantha's work paid out, but the company backing the policy my father sold refused to pay. They said there was reason to doubt Samantha's death was accidental and that it may have been a suicide. And the policy had a clause excluding payments in the event of suicide. I had $50K from my policy and $30K from Samantha's policy. I was already thinking of giving up on $125,000, but my father did not allow me to do this. Hire a lawyer and sue these scoundrels. They have no evidence or evidence that it was suicide. They only have 2 witnesses out of 11 who thought she stepped in front of the truck on purpose. I followed my father's advice, and 2 months later, the insurance company paid out. After the lawyer took his fee, I was left with $195,000. But the lawyer went even further. He filed a lawsuit against the transport company. The truck driver was found to have a blood alcohol level of 0.04, which was over the legal limit. The company offered a settlement, and I received another $65,000. Suddenly, I had the opportunity not just to study in the evenings, but to devote myself completely to my studies. I came to work and wrote a letter of resignation. The shift supervisor asked, "Why?" I explained. He asked what I was going to study, and I said I was planning on getting a degree in civil engineering. He wished me luck, and I returned to my shift. 2 days later, I was called to the shift supervisor, who said, "You need to go up to Mr. Perlman." For what reason? Mr. Perlman will explain everything to you. Perlman was the director of operations, and his proposal stunned me. He suggested changing my resignation letter to a leave application. If I sign a contract to work for the company for 3 years after graduation, the company will cover half the cost of my tuition and textbooks, and I can work as an intern during the holidays. It was an obvious solution, so I asked, "Where do I sign?" The next 2 years flew by quickly. My studies went well, and I made many friends. I didn't join a fraternity, but I knew a lot of guys who were, and sometimes I was invited to their parties. At one of these parties at the Phi Delta fraternity house, fate smiled on me. I was standing at the beer keg filling my glass when Sammy Beeler said, "Just don't turn around, but it seems you have a fan." "What are you talking about?" "About that little girl at 3 o'clock. She doesn't take her eyes off you." I turned slightly while filling the glass and looked. I didn't know her name, but I recognized her. She was in 2 of my classes. She was indeed looking in our direction, but this did not mean that she was looking specifically at me. "Maybe she's looking at you, Sammy." "No, definitely on you." "Who is she?" "No idea. I saw her a couple of times. She studies with me in 2 courses, but I don't know her. Besides, she's probably here with her boyfriend. Girls don't go to these parties alone. At least good girls. She may have come here with someone else, but the way she looks at you, I bet she would have left with you if you wanted." "Well, I don't want to. I stay away from the female gender until I finish my studies. Girls are too much of a distraction." "What's wrong with you, dude? I can't go 2 weeks without thinking about sex. How are you going to survive another year?" "First of all, I only have 6 months left to complete 135 credit hours to graduate. And secondly, willpower." "Willpower, Sammy, the highest willpower," I said, thinking, "and a financial relationship with Mona from a luxury escort agency." I didn't think the girl was looking at me, but as the party went on and I moved around the room talking to people, I noticed that she was always somewhere nearby and her eyes were almost always directed in my direction. She was an amazing woman, and to be honest, if I hadn't decided to stay away from relationships until after graduation, I probably would have followed her myself. However, when it comes to women, nothing can be set in stone. I was standing by the beer keg, filling my glass, when Johnny Dubois came up to do the same and casually asked, "What's your secret, Rob?" Do you have a 10-inch tongue or a 12-inch tongue? What? Are you drunk? Not yet, but I'm getting there. Just wondering what your trick is. CB hasn't taken his eyes off you since you arrived. Who? Who is CB? Connie Barrington. Connie Smythe Barrington, to be exact, but she doesn't use the Smythe part. Suddenly, I became interested in the girl who was said to be watching me. Why should she look at me? I'm sure her boyfriend wouldn't just leave it like that. Her boyfriend was Barry Cross, and Barry can't drink. He's been passed out for 2 hours. Guys have been hitting on her one after another since the two took him to the bedroom, but she seems only interested in you. You could have chosen worse, man. Her family is swimming in money. Smythe Barrington. There cannot be another family with that name. She had to be connected to Robert Connor Ellsworth Smythe Barrington, and an idea began to form in the back of my mind. I didn't know if it would work, but I instantly decided to give it a try. I put down my beer and approached the girl. I struggled with it all night, but I decided that the British sass were right. Their motto is, "He who risks wins," and I decided to apply it to you. I extended my hand to her, introducing myself. She took my hand and said, I was just about to do the same thing, only in my thoughts it was carpe diem, catch a moment. Who will I have to fight to get you to leave with me? With no one. He's already out of the game. I offered her my hand. Shall we go? She took my hand and said, yes. And 7 months later, Connie was pregnant and I was leaving. I won't pretend that it was easy because it was far from it. I became very attached to Connie and could have imagined a future with her under different circumstances, but my hatred for her father was much stronger than my feelings for his daughter. I admit it was cowardly to use her to get back at him, but I couldn't see any other way to get even without ending up in jail for attempted murder or grievous bodily harm. A week passed, and it was reminiscent of my breakup with Samantha. Dozens of calls a day to my cell phone from Connie, which I simply deleted. I had graduated, so I wasn't worried about running into her on campus, and I never told her about my job at the gas company, so she didn't know where to look for me. But she knew where I lived, so I had to be on my guard. Twice I saw her car in the parking lot near the house, and both times I simply drove by. I knew that sooner or later, sooner rather than later, she would knock on my door, but I had no intention of opening it. The next week, the number of calls increased, and I continued to delete them until the day I was waiting for arrived. Among the usual dozens of voice messages, one stuck out to me. Mr. Walton, my name is Rob Barrington, and I need to talk to you. Please call me back at the number. He dictated the number and concluded the message, emphasizing that this was very important. I chuckled and thought, gotcha. The next morning, I dialed the number provided. Good morning. Thank you for calling Barrington Industries. How can I help? Mr. Barrington, please. 2 beeps, and then, Mr. Barrington's office. This is Stella. How can I help? Mr. Barrington, please. How should I introduce you? Bob Walton. 2 beeps, and then, this is Marge. How can I help? I'm trying to reach Mr. Barrington. I am Mr. Barrington's executive assistant. I don't care, even if you are Mother Teresa. I'm trying to reach Mr. Barrington. Mr. Barrington is a very busy man, and my job is to make sure he doesn't have to be disturbed on every call. God knows I would never bother a very busy man, but Mr. Barrington himself called me, left his number, and said that I needed to call him back as soon as possible. Obviously, it's not that important. Otherwise, he would have made sure that I was connected directly. All the best, and I hung up. I wasn't surprised when 3 minutes later my phone rang and the screen showed the number I just hung up on. I chuckled, let the call go to voicemail, and immediately deleted the message without listening. Over the next 2 days, I received 3 more calls from this number, but I ignored them. I started parking on the other side of my apartment complex and then walking to my apartment, thinking that if Connie didn't see my car, she'd think I wasn't home. Of course, I had to be careful and make sure she wasn't sitting in the car and watching my entrance. Twice I saw her in the car and had to go back to my car and go out for dinner and a couple of drinks to wait it out. The calls from Barrington stopped, and I wondered what he would do next. He's not the type to just shrug and give up. He's Smythe Barrington, damn it. Some petty clerk could not afford to ignore him. When this happened, I was surprised. I was on a construction site discussing a plan with the foreman when a car that was clearly a police car drove onto the site. A man in a suit came out and asked one of the workers something, and I saw Mike turn around and point at me. A man in a suit came up to me and introduced himself. Detective Sergeant O'Connor. I would like you to come with me. What's the matter? Am I under arrest? No, you are not arrested, and I don't know what's going on. I was simply asked to bring you. Do I need a lawyer? No. I don't know what's wrong, but I do know that you don't need a lawyer. Should I follow you in my car? No. I'll bring you back when this is all over. At least it sounds like I'm not going to be locked up. Let's go. On the way, my mind was frantically running through options as to why the police wanted to talk to me. My only contact with the authorities was when Samantha died. I didn't even have a parking ticket, let alone anything more serious. I was puzzled when we didn't go to the police station or city hall, but instead parked in the visitors' lot at the Barrington Industries building. Impressive, I said. I knew Barrington was rich and powerful, but owning a police department. Impressive. O'Connor did not respond to this. He got out of the car, and I followed him. We walked through the lobby to the elevators, and he walked over to the one on the left. He took a key card from his pocket, swiped it through the reader next to the elevator door, and the doors opened. We went inside. There were only 3 buttons on the panel, which seemed strange to me, since the building was 6 stories high. One button said up, and that's what O'Connor pressed. The other 2 were designated down 1 inch and down 2. Down 1 and 2, I asked. Down 1 is the lobby where we entered. Down 2 inches underground parking. The doors opened into the reception area, and O'Connor said to the woman behind the counter, Mr. Walton to Mr. Barrington. The woman picked up the phone, pressed a button, and after a second said, He's here. A minute later, an elegantly dressed and very attractive woman entered the reception room. She came up to me. Good morning, Mr. Walton. I'm Marge, and I apologize for the misunderstanding the day you called. Please come with me. She turned around and walked forward, and I couldn't help but notice her figure and think that I would gladly follow this look every day. She led me to the door, opened it, and, letting me in, announced, Mr. Walton is here. Then she closed the door, and I found myself face to face with Robert Connor Ellsworth Smythe Barrington. He stood up, extended his hand, and said, Good morning, Mr. Walton. Can I call you Bob? I didn't shake his hand or answer his question. I just stood and looked at him. He removed his hand, shrugged his shoulders, and said, Please take a seat. I sat down on the chair opposite him, and he said, I'm sure you know why you're here. I think for some reason you wanted me to see that you owned the police station. He grinned and said, Hardly. Terry is one of my cousins. Family, you know. I take it you know my daughter Constance. Yes, a sign. She says that she has a problem and that the cause of this problem is you. I wanted to talk to you and see if we can come to some kind of agreement to solve this problem. If we are talking about the same problem that she mentioned the last time we spoke, then I doubt that we will be able to come to any agreement. What kind of person are you if you cannot take responsibility for your actions? You are mistaken. I have no problem taking responsibility for my actions, but I am not responsible for your daughter's condition. I'm infertile. I can't make a woman pregnant. Constance swears that you are the only one with whom she has had intimate relations, and she has never lied to me in her life. Your daughter was not a virgin when we first had sex. I don't know how many of them came before me, but it's clear that someone else was around her while we were dating. You need to find this person and try to negotiate with him. Let's cut all the nonsense and get down to business, okay? Constance said it was you, and to me that means it was you. How much do you need? For what? To marry Constance and give the child a father. How much do you have? He smiled. It seemed to him that he had now entered familiar territory. Money will solve the problem. Now all that remained was to understand at what price I would agree. Constance says you know about her trust fund and that she will have access to it when she gets married. I will not insist on a marriage contract. Agreed? Are you seriously suggesting that I take on someone else's child for this? I'm not a lawyer, but even I know that in a divorce, any judge who respects himself will look at this trust and say that it belongs to her and only her. Divorce? Of course, it's a divorce. She was with me and managed to get pregnant from another guy and then tried to pin it on me. She will cheat on me before our first anniversary. Sooner or later, I will catch her and file for divorce. Constance says the child is yours, and I believe her. She wouldn't lie to me about something like this. Nonsense. If she lied to me, then she could certainly lie to you in order to win you over to her side. I don't know who the father of her child is, but it's definitely not me. For all I know, it could even be you. How dare you? He shouted, leaning forward and hitting the table with his fist like a judge's gavel. How dare I? Well, you're a little creep who sleeps with other men's wives, so it's not surprising to think that you could go further. This is an absolute lie. Get off your pedestal, Bobby. I have pictures of you having sex with my wife. You, Stedman, and two others. You're crazy. Stop it. You can scream and threaten all you want, but I have pictures of you using Samantha, and I'm not the least bit afraid to send them all over the state. Before she died, she admitted to me that you offered her $25,000 to serve you, Stedman, and some select clients and partners. He leaned back in his chair, sudden understanding crossing his face. Walton, you are Sammy Walton's husband. I didn't see this connection. Then his eyes went wide as it dawned on him. Bastard, it was on purpose. You deliberately made my daughter pregnant to take revenge on me. You may think that I seduced your daughter to take revenge on you for seducing my wife. But the fact remains, I am infertile. Seduced your wife? Is that how you see it? Listen, boy, your wife was a first-class prostitute. She was a hot, sexy woman, and men naturally gravitated towards her. The problem is that when they got close to her, she immediately pulled down her panties and spread her legs. She had not been here even an hour before she was already pleasing Stedman. He took her to lunch at the Marriott and spent the entire day in bed with her. She was so approachable. Yes, sure. And am I supposed to believe this? He stood up, went to the cabinet against the wall, rummaged around, and pulled out a couple of CDs. Then he opened his desk drawer, took out a folder, and said, "Follow me, boy. I have something to show you." Intrigued, I stood up and followed him down the corridor to the conference room. Along one of the walls, there was a large TV with a video player connected. I am a very careful person. I know full well that there will always be people who want to separate me from my money, and I always hedge my bets. Pay attention to the dates you see on these records. He set everything up and pressed the button that started everything up. On the screen, I saw the same room in which I was sitting. There were 4 men sitting at the table where I was sitting, and Stedman entered the room, followed by Samantha. The date on the entry is her first day on the job. Stedman said, "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce our newest employee, Samantha Walton. She prefers to be called Sammy. When I interviewed her for the open secretary position, I asked her what her qualifications were, and after telling me about her typing and computer skills, she stood up and walked over. Sitting at the table, told me that she had another skill that I could appreciate, and then proceeded to give me the best pleasure I had ever received. I told her that we are a very close-knit group here, and then I told her here that if I hired her, I will be happy to share my luck, and she said that it will not be a problem. Please accept her in our department." Sexual entertainment ensued, which Barrington said continued long after he left. And this is in addition to the 3 hours she spent with Stedman at the Marriott Hotel. He inserted another CD into the player, and Barrington appeared on the screen, sitting at his desk. The door opened, Marge led Samantha into the office and left. Barrington asked her to sit down and then said, Marty tells me that you have a particular skill that could be useful to the company. Frankly, some customers, clients, and suppliers need extra incentive to offer us better prices, priority on deliveries, and sign contracts. This is beneficial for us. You are a beautiful and sexy-looking young woman, and I understand that most men who see you will want you. The time you spent in the conference room yesterday leads me to believe that you might agree to this. At work, let's say accounting coordinator. How would you feel about this? Samantha looked him straight in the eyes and said, I'm not going to have sex with whoever you want for a secretary's salary. Of course not, and I wouldn't expect you to either. Which do you prefer? Straight salary or base salary plus commission? I think about the secretary's salary and commission. I would like to have my paycheck deposited directly into a joint account that my husband and I have, and the commissions would be deposited into a separate account that I will open at a different bank. We can do this. I will provide you with an apartment where you can entertain yourself and an account for the expenses of buying clothes and everything else you need to run your business. Things like drinks and things like that. Are you ready to do this? Shall we start today? Jason Willard will be arriving on his flight from Dallas at 9 a.m. this morning. You and Marty will have lunch with him to discuss the details of the contract we want him to sign. After lunch, you will make sure Jason enjoys the ride. Fine. Don't you at least want to see what you're sending, Mr. Willard? She said, standing up and walking behind his table. She knelt down in front of him and began to pleasure him. As you can see, there were very few temptations as far as Sammy was concerned. So yes, I had sex with your wife, but I didn't have to seduce her to do it. That's not all. While I don't mind giving to the people I do business with, I am very careful when it comes to what I give them. I don't want things to turn against me and turn against me. I have a very good private investigator, and I assigned him to Samantha. To find out what he could about her, he went back to her school days and talked to everyone who wanted to talk to him. He discovered that she really enjoyed sex. He shoved the folder he had taken out from the table and handed it to me across the table. Read this, and then tell me again about how I seduced your innocent wife. I'll give you a little time, and then I'll be back. I need to make some calls. He left the room, and I opened the case and saw that he actually had a very good investigator working for him. He walked all the way back to high school. Samantha was a prostitute with round heels. I was so obsessed with her that I didn't even notice. I knew she dated a few other guys before she settled on me, but I didn't know she had sex with most of them. Even after she started getting along with me, she had other boyfriends. She had other boyfriends after we got married and had sex with other guys throughout her pregnancy. All this was a shock to me, but the biggest shock for me was to learn something that I could not even think about in my wildest imagination. The child Samantha carried was not mine. The child was black. Suddenly, I remembered the pitying looks that the hospital workers looked at me. It wasn't because Samantha couldn't have any more children. This is because they pitied the poor, ignorant husband. I was sitting and looking at the report when Barrington came back into the room. He sat down opposite me and just looked at me for a while. Then he said, I'm sorry that I was the one who destroyed your memories of your wife, but unfortunately, I'm not one of those who, when accused, simply shrug their shoulders and walk away. All I did with Sammy was take what was offered. I continued to look at the report, and finally he asked, Are you okay? I looked up at him and said, If it was your wife and you read this, would you be okay? Most likely not. It came as a real shock to me. I knew what she was doing here, and I already left her because of it. But the rest, I didn't know about this. About the child, she led me by the nose from the very beginning. We got married because she said she was pregnant with my child, and all this time the father was someone else. Maybe, or maybe not. Perhaps she really thought it was your child. I stood up, and he asked, Where are you going? I need to seriously think about this. What about Constance? I said, I need to seriously think about everything. Please ask your secretary to call a taxi for me. No need. Terry is waiting for you downstairs. I felt that he wanted to say something else, but he remained silent. Terry stood up as I entered the lobby and headed toward the exit. The drive back to the construction site was silent. I looked out the passenger side window and thought. The events of the morning had dulled the hatred I felt for Barrington. Finding out that he didn't do what Samantha accused him of made me look at things differently. Connie was pregnant because of my hatred of her father, hatred based on false accusations. By the time we returned to the construction site, I already knew what needed to be done. There was little pleasure in this, but it was necessary. After making sure that the crew chief was aware of all the plans, I got into the car, took out the phone, and called Barrington. This time, they connected me right away. When he answered, I asked, "How are you and your daughter? How do you think she will react if she finds out that you slept with my wife? Why are you asking? Just answer. It will probably upset her, but it won't be a surprise to her. She knows that I haven't slept with her mother for over 10 years, and no, the reason is none of your business. I don't need it. I need the CDs and the detective's report. Can I pick them up this afternoon? Why do you need them? If after I show them to your daughter, she still wants to marry me, you will get a son-in-law. Is this really necessary? Should I show her this? For me, yes. I won't be able to move on until I do this. The package will be waiting for you at the reception desk. The only thing I ask is, forget it though. Things will be there. I took a deep breath and called Connie. Voicemail started. I left a message that we needed to talk face to face and said I would be home after 6. Then I stopped by Barrington Industries and picked up the package. At 6, I expected the doorbell to ring, but there was none. At 7, Connie still had not arrived or called. I decided that she didn't want to talk and got ready to go out for dinner. I was already opening the door when Connie approached it. Sorry for being late. I left my phone at home charging and only received your message 20 minutes ago. Why such urgency now when you've been avoiding me for weeks? It's not urgent. If you hadn't come today, I would have called you again tomorrow. I stepped aside and said, "Please come in." She came in and I led her to the kitchen table, pulled out a chair for her, and poured her a glass of white wine, her favorite drink. I opened a bottle of beer and sat down opposite. Now I will tell you a story. You won't like some parts of it, but it's necessary. I told her about Samantha, how she cheated on me, how she blamed Robert Barrington for it, and what he did to her. I only described Samantha's time at Barrington Industries and then said, I promised myself that I would take revenge on the man because of whom my wife cheated on me. I believed that this man was your father, and I decided to strike him in the only way I could, given my limited resources. I knew how socially conscious he was and thought he would be embarrassed in his circles if his daughter ended up pregnant and unmarried. So I deliberately decided to charm you, make you a baby, and send you home to daddy. I probably never would have been able to pull this off without the help of that guy who gave you illegal substances for sex on a date, because I really believed that you were serious when you said you wouldn't have sex before marriage. But he prepared you for me, and I made you a child that night or one of the next. Bastard, you did it on purpose. Yes, on purpose. Today, your father invited me to his office, and although I did not admit anything to him, I accused him of a terrible act. When he demanded an explanation, I said that it was easy for me to believe this because a man who could seduce and sleep with another man's wife was capable of anything. He asked what I meant, and I told him about my wife's confession. He said I was wrong and then showed me the evidence. I want you to watch these discs and read this report. I'll go to the guest bedroom, and if after all this you want to talk to me, just knock on the door. 20 minutes later, there was a knock. I opened the door, and we went back to the kitchen. I filled her glass with wine. She took a sip and said, "Why did you need me to see this?" "Not so you could see what your father did, but so you could see what my wife did." When I found out what she was doing, I confronted her with the truth, and she told me that she was drugged with illegal substances, that they were given by your father's friends, that he filmed everything and threatened to send me the tape if she didn't do what she did, what he wants. I truly believed that she was cheating on me because of your father, and I decided to take revenge on him. I had neither money nor power like your father, so I went towards my goal in the only way that would not send me to jail. I went through you. As you saw in the report and on the tapes, she lied to me. She lied, and I went to take revenge on your father. It's important to me that you understand why I did what I did. I don't expect you to accept my explanations or forgive me, but I hope that you will at least understand my motives. And now, knowing all this, you need to make some decisions. I am ready to take responsibility for our child, but you will have to decide in what form this will be. Of course I will marry you, but you will have to decide whether you want to be married to a man who is capable of such an act. If you decide to marry me and give the child legal status, you will have to decide what our marriage will be like. What does it mean? What kind of marriage? Honestly, I can't imagine how you would want to have anything in common with me under such circumstances. You may want us to look like a happy couple only in public and live separately at home. Maybe you'd rather be a single mother than a wife to me. If we get married, you'll have to decide how long it will last. 6 months after the birth of the child. Year? Maybe you'll divorce me in 2 or 3 months. This way you will get rid of me and avoid the stigma of being an unwed mother and the shame that comes with it. All these decisions are up to you to make. So you never loved me. I was just a tool to get to my father. This is not true. I had feelings for you. Strong feelings. Unfortunately, my feelings for you were suppressed by my hatred of your father. She looked at me silently for almost a minute and then said, I'll need a list of guests you want to invite to the wedding. I'm not sure how soon it will happen, but I'm sure my mother will want it to happen before I start showing. You'll have to clear your schedule. We will need to appear in public as a couple. This Saturday there will be a charity event, which will be attended by all the high society, the same people in front of whom you wanted to disgrace my father. I'll give you a list of other events we need to attend. For 2 of them, you'll need a tuxedo. She stood up and said, I'll call you tomorrow with details for Saturday. You don't need to accompany me. I know the way. This, of course, was pure sarcasm, because the front door was visible directly from the table at which we were sitting. When she reached the door, she turned around and said, We will need to start looking for a suitable house. I'm afraid I'm not cut out for apartment life. And she left, and that's how I got a bride. The next day I went to a jewelry store and bought rings. When I got home, I opened the yellow pages and found a place to buy a tuxedo. Their full ad page said, Call for a fitting, so I called and made an appointment. I had barely hung up when the phone rang again. It was Connie with the details of Saturday's event. And I'll need your list as soon as possible. My mother chose a date 6 weeks from now. I'll give it to you on Saturday. I was surprised that she was still living in the same apartment as Harriet and Gwen. I thought that when she graduated, she would have her own place. Fortunately, no one was there when I picked up Connie. I really didn't want to date Harriet after using her the way I did. Once in the car, I handed her the engagement ring I bought her, and she looked at it for a moment and then put it on her finger. Not a romantic moment by any means, but there was no romance in this situation to begin with. I met Connie's mother for the first time, and she seemed like a nice woman. Given the circumstances, she was surprisingly friendly to me, and we discussed the upcoming wedding. The speed of this will raise questions, but it won't be the first time the couple have had to do something in a hurry. You should come see me sometime when we can talk longer and in private. I told her I would do it, but I wasn't sure I meant it. I knew one of the things she was going to talk about was why I married her daughter after going out of my way to deny paternity of Connie's baby, and I didn't want her to know why, and I didn't want to come up with some lie to tell her that I would have to try to remember. Her father acted towards me as if we had never spoken in his office. I met a lot of important people, most of whom I didn't remember the names of, who came the next day. It was a pleasant evening, and I didn't embarrass myself or Connie. Connie was well known and quite popular. She was asked a dozen times, and she always looked at me to make sure everything was okay, and I nodded yes. On the way home, Connie said, My mom likes you. I guess there is no accounting for taste. You don't understand. My mother never, and I mean never liked any of the guys I dated or introduced to her. Your mother is well aware of the circumstances under which we will marry and has decided to make the best of it. Oh no, I know my mother and I can tell. She really likes you, and I don't mind telling you that it surprises the hell out of me. I turned around to take her home, and she asked, "Where are you going? This is not the way to you." My place? I can't have sex with you with my roommates, so yeah, your place. I looked at her and she said, "Don't look at me like that. You like sex and we're going to get married, and since you've already beaten me and I like sex, it's only natural that we do it." I wonder what other surprises she has in store for me. I turned around and headed towards my apartment. Connie was shedding her clothes as we walked through the door. She headed straight to the bedroom and was naked and sprawled out on the bed when I finally took off my clothes. "Give me pleasure," she said with a playful smile, and I thought about these words. Previously, she always followed my decisions, never taking the initiative in such moments. Shrugging my shoulders, I obeyed her request, anticipating the next surprise that she had prepared for me. As I approached her, I suddenly felt a foreign presence in her gaze. Raising my head, I met her eyes and noticed a slight smile on her lips. "Correct your mistakes, dear. This is your punishment for all those moments when you drove me crazy." Her voice was soft, but there was a note of power in it. This wasn't the first time she tested my boundaries. Memories of past daring adventures came flooding back into my mind, student parties, crazy bets, and moments that ended in unexpected twists and turns. Then one girl even left me her number, but I never found the courage to call back. Now, however, everything was different. There was a special atmosphere of trust and play between us, and I was ready to follow her wherever she led me that evening. Connie smiled at me, and I got to work. While I was busy, she was telling me how she managed to sneak out of a party and spend time alone with several guys. "Twice, baby. I got 2 servings this evening," she said with a hint of boastfulness in her voice. "From 2 different guys." Her words were accompanied by deep sighs and light pushes in my direction. When her breathing became erratic, she squeezed my head and froze, completely immersed in her sensations. After a short pause, I helped her change position, and we continued. This was far from tender hugs or romantic touches. Rather, everything was done with unbridled passion and straightforwardness. She responded to my every impulse without holding back her emotions, and we were both completely immersed in the moment. Later, when we had both caught our breath a little, I moved closer to her face. Her gaze was full of challenge and pleasure. She continued to surprise me by showing me how confident she felt in such moments. "You could be a little more gentle," she grinned when I was behind her. "You might as well not provoke me," I retorted with a smile. Our time together continued, and every moment was filled with sincerity, passion, and a complete lack of any boundaries. In the end, we both ended up tired but happy. She turned to me with a playful smile and began to speak. "There has always been a special chemistry between us, but this time something was different." "How do you like it?" she asked with a cheeky note in her voice. I was not ready for such a turn, but our intimacy developed rapidly. There was something new between us, and I wanted to explore it with her. Her confidence and openness surprised me, but I didn't stop. We trusted each other, and at that moment nothing existed except the two of us. After some time, when the tension subsided, she pulled away and went to the bathroom. I remained on the bed, feeling calm and satisfaction flowing inside me. When she returned, her gaze was soft and her smile was sincere. This evening was definitely a turning point for us, opening a new chapter in our relationship. "You bastard, you rotten bastard. It was dirty and fucking disgusting. What kind of person are you? That man who is not going to put up with your crap. This was an object lesson for you. You want to act like a stupid prostitute, go and do it. But when you do it, I will treat you like one. Call it setting ground rules. You are on your own, and you can choose what you want to do if you are going into this marriage with the intention of playing on the side whenever you want. I feel like this will happen. It's quite simple. And don't do anything that will humiliate me or disrespect me in public or in front of people we know. Act like a bride and wife and you will be treated like a bride and wife. Act like a prostitute, and me. I will treat you like a girl of easy virtue. And you need to understand this. When you act like an easy girl, the people you're slutty with will smirk and laugh at me behind my back. Eventually, I'll find out who they are and get my revenge on them, and that's where it begins. Now, who are the two who had sex with you tonight, knowing that you are my fiancé? She looked away and then said, I lied. There was only one, and I'm not telling you who he was. All you need to know is that he and I kept company for a while after you turned your back on me. Tonight it was gratitude for having you by my side. Goodbye, damn it. What now? What do you mean, what now? I was going to tire you out tonight, but the mood has changed. To hell with a lot of moods. You started us off with a prostitute night, so I'll continue. On all fours, bitch. She looked like she wanted or was about to say something, but then changed her mind and took a stand. I started getting dressed to take her home, and she asked me what I was doing, and I told her, I'm not going anywhere. We need to get used to waking up together. Waking up with her was an experience in itself. I didn't think that after our night she would be able to get from me twice more, but she did. For the next 3 weeks, she spent 2 or 3 nights a week with me, and we spent the weekends house hunting. We found a few options that I liked, but she didn't, and a few that she liked, but I didn't like. She was thinking big, as befits someone who grew up in a big house, while I was looking for something smaller and more within my budget. I wasn't too worried about the cost since I still had plenty of insurance left in my account, but maintaining the houses Connie wanted would quickly bankrupt me. I didn't need a 4-car garage, tennis courts, stables, or vast grounds. A simple house with 3 to 4 bedrooms, a built-in pool and hot tub was just what I needed. At the end of the 3rd week, the expected invitation came. We were having dinner at my place when Connie said, Mom and Dad are inviting you to dinner on Friday. I know what we're going to talk about, so I'll probably get ahead of your father. What does it mean? This means that your mother will want to talk about the wedding and plans, and sooner or later your father will talk about money. And what does get ahead of him mean? I got up from the table, took my briefcase, and took out a document from it. Returning to the table, I handed the paper to Connie. What is this? Marriage contract. I have already signed it and notarized it. All you have to do is sign, and when your father starts talking about money, all I have to do is hand him this document. She read it, shook her head as if she didn't believe what she was reading, and then looked at me and asked, You are sure? Absolutely. This will shock my father. After what my sisters did, he's sure that any man I marry will think about my trust fund and try to access it. Dinner went pretty much as I predicted, except that her dad was a little annoyed that she didn't go to work for him after graduating from university. She explained that she wanted to make it on her own so that no one could say that she got ahead in her career because of her family connections. This did not satisfy him. Her mother was talking about the wedding, and I saw her father waiting for his chance to intervene in the conversation, but I did exactly what I planned. I beat him to it. There is one issue that needs to be clarified before the wedding, I said, and took out an envelope from the inside pocket of my jacket. I handed it to her father, saying, Everything is very clear here. In the event of divorce for any reason, both parties will keep what they had before the marriage. Everything acquired during the marriage will be divided equally. Simply put, Connie's trust fund will remain hers, every last cent. There's one more thing that needs to be sorted out, and I haven't discussed it with Connie yet, but I intend to make a will that if, God forbid, Connie dies before me, her money will go to our children, not to me. Moreover, you will both be appointed as joint executors of the will. The look on Barrington's face was priceless, but Connie's mother smiled and nodded as if she knew something the others didn't. While the servants cleared the table, Connie and her mother went off to look at the material her mother had selected for the wedding dress and bridesmaids' dresses. I was left alone with Barrington. We went into his office, he poured me some brandy and said, You surprised me. But I guess that was your plan, wasn't it? Yes and no. Yes and no. I knew it would surprise you, But I didn't have such a goal. Connie told me about her sisters and how you treat their husbands. So yeah, I figured you'd be surprised that there wouldn't be another one like them in the family. Yes? Well, I was right about both. There are more houses than they need, new cars, expensive toys, and trusts are melting away before their eyes. Both don't have decent jobs, and when the money runs out, they won't be able to continue living large. Then they will come to me for help, and I will probably help them. After all, they are my daughters. But I need to ask, why did you do this? There's no point in lying at this stage. We both know that I intentionally got Connie pregnant and then left so you could experience the social stigma for getting your daughter pregnant out of wedlock. It was petty, but it was the only thing I could think of to get back at you for what I thought you did to Samantha that wouldn't send me to jail. Then I found out that you had nothing to do with what Samantha became. That left me with only responsibility for Connie's baby. I was completely honest with Connie. I told her what I did and why, and then I told her I would marry her and give the child my last name. Connie surprised the hell out of me when she agreed. I was sure she wouldn't want anything to do with a scoundrel like me. I go into this marriage fully expecting it to end in divorce. Connie will have a baby, and in 6 months she will file for divorce. The child would escape the stigma of being illegitimate. Connie would escape the stigma of being a single mother, and she would be able to move on with her life. I've thought of everything. I will buy a house before the wedding so that I can keep it after the divorce. When Connie files for divorce, I won't resist. She will still have her trust, and I won't have to pay child support. All that remains for me is to pay child support. Quite a cold calculation. Think for yourself. If you were Connie, would you want a scoundrel like me as a partner? You're not a complete bastard. When you found out the whole truth, you took responsibility. You could say, I don't care, what's done is done, and leave. That's not the point. I did what I did on purpose, and I don't think Connie or any other woman would want to stay with a man who would do that. Maybe we can change the subject. What are your future work plans? I'm happy with everything where I work now. I like the job, the salary and benefits are good and seem to suit me. They have already hinted to me that over time, I will be able to move up the career ladder. Ever thought about working for a civil engineering company, about eventually opening your own business? Not really. My father indirectly taught me a lesson about work. Every morning he would get up and grumble about having to go to this damn place again, and every night at dinner I would listen to him complain about the stupid decisions of the management, the foreman, and the chief mechanic. I once asked him why he continued to work there if he hated the place so much. The only thing he could say was that he had a stable salary, good benefits, and too much experience to be fired. He made it pretty clear to me that I wanted a job that I would enjoy going to, and that's what I have now. I'm happy where I am, and they're happy enough with me to pay half of my tuition and textbooks on the condition that I sign a contract and work for them for 3 years after graduation. Before the conversation went any further, Connie and her mother joined us, and the whole conversation turned to the wedding, the honeymoon, and where we would be living. We discussed how Connie and I couldn't agree on the house. During this conversation, I realized that I was looking at everything all wrong. I just told Barrington that I was going to buy a house before the wedding so that I could have it after the divorce that I was sure would happen. I should have chosen a home that I would love and be happy in even after Connie and I broke up. With that thought in mind, I looked back over the houses we had looked at, and 2 stood out. I decided to take a closer look at both. When it was time to leave, Connie's mother came up to me and reminded me that she was waiting for my call to arrange lunch or an invitation to visit for a private conversation. I promised that I would call. When I was driving Connie home, she asked, "What is this pre-death nonsense? This is not nonsense, and this can happen. Just because you're young and healthy doesn't mean you're immortal. Look at Samantha. Young, energetic, full of life, and died at 23. The will takes care of the child, and that's what it's all about." She was silent for several miles, and then said, "I don't want to go to my place." Accordingly, I drove the car towards my apartment, and another exhausting night followed. Over the next 2 days, I looked again at the houses I was interested in and finally chose a one-story house with 3 bedrooms, an attached 3-car garage, a swimming pool, and a hot tub. I put down a deposit of $150,000, which almost shocked the realtor. I had already agreed with the bank where I have accounts to finance the purchase and assumed that the transaction would be closed within 30 days. Samantha's mother said she didn't want to keep her daughter's things, so I went to the warehouse and went through all the contents to donate to charities. In the process, I discovered another lie from Samantha. She said Barrington would give her $25,000 for the work she did. However, I found 2 passbooks containing a total of over $80,000. Samantha said she was trying to get the $25,000 so we could make a down payment on the house. If she were looking at me from above or below from where she is now, she would definitely see a smile on my face. She just paid for my new house. I will move into it debt-free. I decided to end the meeting with Connie's mother. We agreed to have lunch the next day at the Hilton Hotel. Maggie was already there when I arrived. She stood up, smiled, and extended her hand to me. I squeezed her and, to her surprise, kissed her in a continental manner, after which we sat down. They say if you want to know what your wife will look like in 20 years, look at her mother. Maggie was absolutely stunning. She was 44, but looked no older than 30. A quick glance around the restaurant confirmed that almost all the men were looking at her. The waitress came over, took my drink order, and left. I'm sure you're just bursting with curiosity, aren't you? What could Connie's mother want to talk to you about, and in private, right? Something like that. Well, that's the last thing you would expect. Are you sure you want to marry my daughter? This took me by surprise, and I asked, what? A simple question that requires a simple answer. Are you sure you want to marry Connie? It's not a matter of whether I want to. This is what I have to do to make things right. Why are you asking such a question? Because you're a very nice guy, and I don't think you fully understand what you're getting yourself into. And don't brush aside the words that you are good at. I know why you did what you did, and yes, it was not a noble thing to do. But when you found out the circumstances, you acted like a man. In my eyes, that makes you special. Robert, of course, immediately signed you up as a fortune hunter, but you very skillfully denied this. Another reason to consider you a good person. The waitress brought us our drinks, took our lunch order, and when she left, Maggie said, I had to ask myself if I wanted to see a man of your quality commit his life to Connie, and the answer I came to was, it's none of my business. But I convinced myself to at least give you an honest warning. I don't understand. What's wrong with Connie? To put it bluntly, she is a girl of easy virtue. She told me about it. She said she did it to spite me so that I would be angry for leaving her. She wanted me to see it. The only problem is that when I left, I didn't look back, so I never knew what she was doing. And you believed it. Why not? She wasn't like that when we met, and she wasn't like that while we were together. That was then, and now it's more important. Now, did you know that at your first public event together, after you put the ring on her, and she told everyone she was engaged to you, she snuck into the wardrobe with Mike Balla, Billy Shepard, and Jamie Auden and slept with them? Of course, I knew she slept with someone, but she told me it was only one person. No, I didn't know that, I said. And I bet you don't even know that right now, as we're sitting here talking, she's in room 407 with Mike Balla and Jamie Auden. I had no idea. I chose this restaurant and the hour of the day for a reason. I also arrived early enough to get this particular table. Note that the elevators are visible from here. If they haven't changed their schedule, they're taking long lunch breaks, then they'll be downstairs within the next 10 to 15 minutes. I thought the best way to deal with this was to let you see it with your own eyes. They brought us food, and while we ate and chatted about trifles, I kept one eye on the elevators. At 1:20, the doors opened and Connie walked out with 2 men. I recognized both of them. They were at a charity event that I went to with Connie. I looked at Maggie. This doesn't change anything. I still need to legitimize my child, and then, after a reasonable period of time after the birth of the child, a quiet divorce can be filed. This is not the reaction I expected. No, what did you expect? anger, rage, or something like that. In fact, this is what I was hoping for, and not the calm acceptance that I now see. Why did you hope for anger and rage? Because those emotions could lead you to agree to what I want to do. And what is this? Go upstairs and do the same as your bride. Why do you need this? Revenge. I don't understand. It's simple. I'm a healthy woman and I love sex. I don't allow my husband to make love to me, so I satisfy my needs by getting involved with the husbands, fiancés, and boyfriends of the women my husband sleeps with. This is my revenge. And he doesn't care. He doesn't know. He thinks I lost all interest in sex after the last time he gave me gonorrhea. Connie told me that you and Robert haven't had sex in over 10 years. I didn't believe her. This is true. Robert gave me sexually transmitted diseases 4 times in 6 years, and after the last time I refused to let him near me. I told him that because of my recent illness, I had lost all interest in sex. Why then do you remain married to him? Mainly because of the money. Barrington Industries used to be called Barrington Manufacturing. My family owned Stowe Industrial, and our parents wanted Robert and me to get married and merge companies. Besides, I loved Robert and thought he loved me. It was a complex transaction in which, after a merger of companies, the new company was named Barrington Industries, but my family received 51% of the shares. I'm an only child, and when my parents died, I inherited their shares. According to the prenuptial agreement, if we divorce for any reason, the company will have to be liquidated. I wouldn't have suffered financially, but a lot of good people would have been out of work. I couldn't let this happen just because Robert couldn't keep his dignity in his pants. Besides, being in relationships with different men is exciting, and I get a lot of new sensations. A sort of sexy buffet. Why not one constant lover? God, you are beautiful and sexy enough to get any man. Yes, but where will the revenge be then? While we were getting dressed, she said, I hope this won't be a one-time thing. It will depend on how often you can find time and when it is convenient. I can't always get off work like I did this afternoon, and I guess Connie will keep me busy in the evenings. Long lunch breaks, staying late at work a couple of times a week. Get used to the idea that this is part of the job. Besides, I can always assign her 1 or 2 wedding preparation tasks to keep her busy and not disturb us. How long do you usually keep lovers near you for revenge? Until they get tired of me. I can't imagine anyone getting tired of you. They usually want more from me than I can give, so they gradually disappear. So you want to say that everything depends on me? Basically, yes. What if I never get tired of this? How will you cope with your need to take revenge on the men of the women Robert slept with if I don't stop dating you? As long as I'm with you, I'll still have fun with the man whose wife slept with Robert. We exchanged a passionate kiss and left the room. The next 2 weeks were intense. Connie was busy preparing for the wedding, trying to make sure everything went perfectly. I was able to meet with Maggie 2 or 3 times a week, and she kept me informed of what her detectives were reporting about Connie's activities. Connie dated Bala twice, once each with Shepard and Ogden, and twice with all 3 together. The second time she met all 3, there were 4 days left before the wedding. According to Connie, that evening she had a bachelorette party organized by her work colleagues. The next day she thought I was at a bachelor party thrown by my friends. She was only half right. It really was my bachelor party, but there were only 2 participants, Maggie and me. The wedding went off without a hitch, and after the reception, Connie and I headed to the airport for our honeymoon. Once we got to our hotel in Aruba, we checked in and unpacked. Connie put on something airy and transparent, took a seductive pose, and said, "Are you ready to consummate our union, sailor?" She was shocked and stunned when I replied, "Not today. We will not be able to consummate our marriage until I see written confirmation from a doctor or laboratory that you are not infected with any infection. I have no idea who else Shepard, Ogden, and Bala might have slept with besides you, and I'm not going to risk picking up anything they or anyone else might have passed on to you. Contact your hotel doctor. Perhaps he can give a conclusion quickly enough, and then we will still have a chance to consummate before we return home." In the meantime, I'll go down to the bar and have a couple of drinks. You can join if you want. I left the room, leaving her standing with her mouth open in surprise. She surprised me. I didn't think she would come down, but 20 minutes after I settled in at the bar, she sat down on the bar stool next to me. The bartender took her order, and when he left to take it, Connie said, "Why are we even here? Why did you spend money on this trip if you weren't going to do anything? We are here for the same reason we got married, for the sake of appearance. You don't make sense. You've been sleeping with me all this time. What's different now that we're here? Until the evening of your so-called bachelorette party, I did not know about your 3 lovers. You noticed that we haven't had sex since that night, right? I thought you were saving up for a memorable wedding night. Well, I guess, depending on your perception, this night will indeed be memorable, in its own way. I don't understand what's happening. You have made it clear that you are marrying me only so that the child will be legitimate. Why do you care what I do if you were going to leave after he was born anyway? I never said that. I said that the decision about how our marriage will develop and how long it will last will be up to you. I had no intention of filing for divorce. I immediately said that any decision about divorce will be yours. I also said that if you are going to cheat on me, you should be careful and do it quietly. I won't stand for people making fun of me by pointing fingers at the poor, stupid cuckold. I also said that I would take revenge on anyone who made me a laughing stock. Someone saw you enter a hotel room with a man who was not me. This man knows me, and I hired a private investigator to follow you. That's how I found out about your 3 lovers. I dealt with Shepard the day before the wedding, and I'll deal with the rest when we get home. What did you do to Billy? I beat him so bad he had to go to the emergency room. It was unfair. I told him that's okay with you. I told all 3 of you that you agree. You told me that this is my body and I have to make a choice what to do with it. I did so, but I also told you to be careful not to cause me any public humiliation. You could have walked into that hotel room and the guy could have followed you 10 minutes later, or he could have walked in first and you could have joined him later, but that's not what you did. You walked into this room hand in hand and were seen doing it. So now there are at least 2 people there who know that my wife is a cheating prostitute and that she has been cuckolded. I told you I wouldn't support it, and I won't. So I'm on a sexless honeymoon. Unless you show me that the guys you had sex with didn't infect you. Why is this important to you now? We've been making love for 3 months now, and I've been seeing these guys the whole time we've been together, so if they gave me something, I'd already share it with you. Maybe, maybe not. Any one of these 3 could have had sex with some girl a week ago and picked up something they gave you at your party. I took the tests myself on Saturday and will call them on Tuesday to find out the results. If I'm infected, I have to get it from you. So if I'm already infected, so are you, and we can have sex after a phone call. If I'm not infected, we won't have sex until you get permission. If you are not allowed, we will not have sex until you bring me proof that everything you have is cured. We can still have our honeymoon. We can enjoy the beach, nightlife, sightseeing, and everything else this place has to offer. For me, this is not enough. Tomorrow, I will call home and call the family lawyer. The moment I said yes, I entered my trust fund. The money will be transferred to my checking account so I can buy a ticket and fly home. This is not necessary. Just use the back of the ticket you came here on. I forgot about it. She got up and left without touching the drink. I finished my drink and watched one of the several TVs in the bar while I made plans for what to do the next day. I thought scuba diving would be a good way to start what was obviously going to be a 2-week vacation for me instead of a 2-week honeymoon for us. Connie returned about 30 minutes later. I'm booked on the first flight in the morning. He leaves at 10:10. This gives you enough time to change your mind about ending. No problem. If you can get tested and cleared by then, we'll be ready to go. Okay, then I'll use the time until you get back to look for a suitable house. Don't waste your time. I've already found the one I want and made the down payment. Should close in 30 days or so. What if I don't like it? Probably not. This is one of the ones we considered and which you rejected. How could you do this without talking to me? Easily. Once I found out about your three playmates, it became obvious to me that we would eventually get divorced. So if I was going to be stuck with a house, it had to be the one I wanted. When you return, warn Bala and Ogden that I will come for them when I return home. This will give them time to run and hide, and I will have to hunt them down. I like to hunt. You know this about me, don't you? Pursue them while I hunt them down one by one. I can't talk you out of this. Do you care about them that much? Not really, but I feel responsible. I turned them on, and when they started to doubt, I said that you and I have an agreement, and that you don't mind me playing. I'll think about it. I don't promise anything, but I'll think about it. She got up and left, and was no longer in the room when I returned there. I took a shower and went to bed. I slept soundly and didn't wake up when Connie came back, but she was in bed next to me when I woke up. She didn't wake up when I got up or got dressed. I left her ticket on the bedside table and went down to breakfast. After breakfast, I headed to the beach and diving center that the girl at the front desk told me about. It was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I returned to the room, and, strangely enough, Connie was there. I thought you left. I changed my mind. I went to the doctor this morning, and for $1,000, he promised a quick test. He said the results would be either late Wednesday or early Thursday. Why did you change your mind? I don't want a divorce. I only slept with these guys because I was mad at you for what you did to me. You weren't even mad at me. All I did was fall in love with you, and you fell in love with me on purpose, beat me up, and then dumped me. I owe you a debt. It wasn't about sleeping with the three of them. It was about sleeping with you after them, while I still had something left in me. From them. I felt that I owed it to you. I had no intention of continuing with them after the wedding. I fully intend to keep the vows I have made. I looked at her for a few moments and then asked, "What do you want to do this afternoon?" On Tuesday, I called home and found out that my test was clear. On Thursday morning, Connie found out that she too was in the clear, and we spent Thursday afternoon and evening finally devoting ourselves completely to each other. The rest of the time there passed as it should on a perfect honeymoon. On the day I returned home, I called Maggie and told her that I could no longer date her, at least not intimately, and explained why. If Connie really meant what she said and will remain faithful, then I will. But if not, and you haven't found someone to take revenge by then, I'll definitely call you. I always knew you were a good guy. I'll tell you this. If my daughter messes up and you call and I'm already with someone, I'll leave him without a second thought and we'll have fun again. Thank you, honey. I needed that. What exactly? Knowing that someone really cares about me. Don't you think Constance loves you? I don't know, honey. I can only hope and wait. 3 weeks later, at dinner, Connie said she had lunch with Shepard. He wanted to know when we would meet again. I said never. I said I was a married woman now and would honor my vows. He didn't take it well. He said I owed him for the thrashing you gave him. Why are you telling me this? Because someone might have seen us and told you about it, and I don't want it to look like I'm hiding anything from you. I'll be seen with Billy, Mike, and Jamie from time to time because we're working together, and we have business lunches with them and other colleagues. Also, sometimes I can have drinks with colleagues after work, and they will probably be there too. I know how fragile our relationship is because of what I did before the wedding, so I need to be completely honest with you if I don't want everything to go to hell. I can't ask more of you. The next day, Maggie called me around noon. After exchanging greetings, she said, Constance had lunch with one of her former lovers yesterday. Are you still following her? I paid for 6 months of surveillance, and there's still 2 left. When they're not watching Robert, they're watching Constance, and since Robert is away, they've turned their attention to my daughter. Anyway, the guy who was watching took the next booth over and overheard most of the conversation. Constance dismissed him and said that nothing would ever happen between them. I thought you'd be pleased to know that. Thank you. That's good to hear. Not for me, honey. I was hoping she'd get back together with him. For what? So that you and I can have a reason for sweet music again. I can't believe you want to waste your time on me. I have news for you, love. If I could have found a way to remove Robert and pass as innocent, you would not have become Constance's husband. You would have become her new stepfather. Ogo. Yes, dear, and don't you dare forget it. Take care of my baby. Bye. When I hung up the phone, I started to think that Connie and I could work out. The ultrasound showed we were having a boy, and we started discussing names. Connie asked if I would mind if we named him after her father, and when I asked why, she replied, "He brought us together." I didn't care, so the name she chose turned out to be a real tongue-tied one. Robert Connor Ellsworth Smythe Barrington Walton. I had doubts about whether to give a child such a name. I could imagine the kind of fights he would get into when the other kids started laughing at him. But then I realized that the name would be used extremely rarely. When he starts school, he will register as Robert Walton and use one of the other parts of the name as initials. And knowing the kids, since my name is Robert Walton, they'll probably call him Junior or just Junior. Robert Kesb. Walton was born a healthy boy weighing 8 pounds and 9 ounces and immediately became the favorite of his grandparents. Connie's sisters only had girls, so Robbie became the only boy grandson and was spoiled at every turn. I could already see then that the poor boy would be spoiled beyond belief. Connie took 9 months of maternity leave and then returned to work. There was a daycare in their office building, so Robbie went to work with her. She called me a couple of times and asked me to pick up Robbie so she could go out for drinks with her office colleagues. She always told me about everything that happened. Shepard continued to persuade her to get into a relationship, and at one point she had to splash booze in his face to force him to back off. When the rest of her office saw this, they began to make sure that Shepard didn't overstep his boundaries again. Everything was going well for us until Connie's company Christmas party arrived. We didn't go to the last one because it took place during her maternity leave. I wasn't looking forward to this event with enthusiasm because it promised to be an awkward evening for me. All 3 of Connie's ex-lovers were supposed to be there, including Shepard, who I beat so badly he had to go to the hospital. Connie did not share my concerns. The hall is large, and we will sit as far away from them as possible. I admit, I expect that they will try to hurt you by asking me to dance, but I will always ask you if you mind. Don't be shy about saying no. I want to have fun, but under no circumstances am I going to do anything that might hurt you or damage our relationship. I'm expected to dance with the bosses, and it would be nice if you danced with their wives, but you don't have to. I'll be a good girl. I'll try to be charming. Don't be too charming. Andy's wife is a stunning woman, and I don't want her to decide to test you. Is she cheating on her husband? As far as I know, no, but she hasn't met you yet. Everything went as I expected. There was cocktail hour, followed by dinner, then speeches, and then live music. I was introduced to a bunch of people whose names I immediately forgot. I met her boss Andy and his wife Jessica, and she was truly amazing. If I was in the mood to chase girls, she would be first on the list. Shepard, Ogden, and Bala sat with their companions on the other side of the room. I noticed that they looked in our direction from time to time, and their glances were clearly unfriendly. I wonder if their companions knew what was happening. The dancing began, and I danced the first 3 tunes with Connie, and then Sam, her office manager, invited her, and I politely invited his wife, Sarah. Then Connie's other colleague invited her to dance, and she looked at me, and I nodded in agreement. When she returned to the table, we drank another one. I drank the vodka tonic with a lime wedge, but after the second sip, I slipped the waitress 20 and told all my next vodka tonics to just be lime water. I was in dangerous territory and wanted to keep my mind clear. I knew that Shepard was seething with anger at the beating, and I expected him to enlist Ogden and Ball to help him get even with me. I didn't know if they would try to do something at the party, but I wanted to be prepared. I expected Ball or Ogden to ask Connie to dance, so I was surprised when Shepard did. He turned out to have much stronger nerves than I thought. Connie looked at me, and I think I shocked her by nodding in agreement. While they were dancing, I noticed Andy's wife, Jessica, was sitting alone, so I asked her to dance. When she was in my arms, she said, "You surprised me a little. Oh, I wouldn't think you were a weakling. You speak as if you consider me to be him. May I know why?" Quite the submissive way you let her dance with one of your lovers. With one of her former lovers. What she did before she said, yes, doesn't bother me, just like my past exploits don't bother her. Are you sure that he is an ex? My experience suggests that a girl who has had 2 or 3 partners at the same time rarely refuses this. She knows that I know, and she knows what will happen if they stop being exes. May I ask why you are so interested in this? Andy has a crush on Connie and has been hanging around her for a long time. Without much success, I might add. You know about this, and it doesn't bother you. We have an open marriage, dear, and we sometimes arrange exchanges with certain couples. Honestly, I even hope that Andy will work out with her, because then maybe I'll get a piece of you too. The music stopped, and I started to walk her to her table, but she stopped me. One more dance, please. The music started playing again, and as Jessica was back in my arms, I noticed Connie walk out onto the dance floor with Andy. I smiled and said, "Distracting me from Connie to give your husband a chance to work his charms? Am I so transparent? You must love him very much if you let him behave so freely." "Oh, I love you so much, darling, but I also have an ulterior motive." "Oh, how's that?" "If he succeeds, I'll have a chance with you." "That's fair enough, so I'll be straightforward too. If Andy succeeds, our marriage will be over, and I will consider myself free of my vows. In that case, I will be happy to give you a chance. Of course, if you still want me when I'm no longer part of the couple." I said that we have an open marriage, which means that I can do whatever I want as long as I don't hide it from him and always come home to him. So yeah, if you ever feel free, be sure to let me know. The music ended, and I walked Jessica to her table and then back to mine. Connie was already sitting in place, and a new melody began. I extended my hand to her, and we went out onto the dance floor. "Are you having a good time?" I asked. "Yes, great. And you?" "This evening was interesting for me." "So Jessica has already got you hooked. Where did you get the idea? She's the only one besides me with whom you danced 2 dances in a row. She is an interesting woman, and we had a very interesting conversation." "About what?" "Mostly about you." "About me. Why was she talking about me?" "Think about it. Maybe I'll tell you when we leave." "This is unfair." "It depends on which side you look at. I'm not asking you what you talked about with your dance partners." "No, but I'll tell you if you want to know." "Well, I don't want to. Of course I'm curious, but not that curious. There's something left unsaid here." "You're right." She bowed her head and looked at me intently, and I just smiled and continued to dance. When we returned to the table and sat down, I noticed that Connie's glass was empty. I went to get a new drink, and when I returned, Bala was already at the table. He looked at me and asked, "Do you mind if I ask Connie to dance?" "Not at all," I said, which clearly surprised Connie. While they were dancing, I decided it was a good time to go to the toilet. As I was finishing up my task, Shepard and Ogden entered the toilet. I zipped it up, turned to them, and Shepard grinned. "It's payback time, bastard." I put my hand in my pocket and said, "You really don't need it." "Oh yes, we need it," he said and moved towards me. I pulled a pepper spray from my pocket and sprayed it into his eyes. His hands flew up to his face, and I kicked him right in the groin. He screamed, grabbed the wound, and collapsed to the floor. I turned to Oyden, defiantly removed the spray, and smiled. "I like a good, fair one-on-one fight, don't I?" I stepped forward, and he ran out of the room. I stepped over the wriggling Shepard, washed my hands, and returned to the party. As I approached the table where Shepard, Oyden, and Bala were sitting, I noticed that Oyden's face had turned pale. The others also looked nervous, except for Bala's wife. I smiled at her and said, "We don't know each other, but since your husband is dancing with my wife, it would be fair if I invite you to dance." She smiled and said, "With pleasure." We went out onto the dance floor, and she introduced herself. "I'm Gwen. You're brave, you know. Why did you decide that? By the way, you came to the table after what was supposed to happen in the toilet." Poor Jamie was as white as a sheet when he came back, and everyone noticed that Billy wasn't with him. And then you appear, calm and smiling. Sorry for ruining everyone's evening. Not everyone. Definitely not for me. I can't stand Billy, and I can barely stand Jamie. But they are Mike's friends, and I have to endure it. I'm surprised Mike didn't go with them. Mike told them not to do it and refused to participate. Why did you ask me to dance? Did you want to? How should I say exchange? The temptation, of course, is great, because you are a stunningly beautiful woman. But I'm one of those weird ones who keeps my promises. Is your wife the same? Time will show. The music stopped, but she said, "Don't lead me back, one more dance." The next melody began to play, and as we moved to the music, she continued. "And that's not all. I told him that forgiveness comes at a price. I told him that he owed me a debt and that one day I would return home completely satisfied with someone else, and he would not have to say a word, otherwise I would disappear with the children. Are you serious or just wanted to scare him?" "Oh, I was absolutely serious. And when you asked me to dance, I was hoping it would be today. Sorry to disappoint you. I'll take you into account if something goes wrong with your wife. I'll leave my get out of jail free card for now, just in case." As we walked to the car, Connie said, "I guess it didn't go as bad as you expected. It looks like you even liked it." "I had a great time. Heck, when two beautiful women offer to play with me, it's always a great pastime." "Who?" "I'll gouge out their eyes. Bala's wife, for example. She knows about you and her husband and has offered me a little revenge if I want to settle scores." "How could she find out?" "We were very careful." "Apparently not enough." "Are you going to do this?" "It's up to you." "From me?" "Why from me?" "It's simple. You keep your vows, and I will keep mine. If not, it frees me from mine. I told you that all my games were before the wedding, and that after the wedding, I am not going to do this. I know you said so, but can you keep your promise? A very experienced woman told me today that once a woman has tried a threesome or foursome and liked it, she will always want it again and again." "Who told you this?" "Jessica, Andy's wife." "How did you even end up in such a conversation with her?" "When she asked me how I felt about my wife dancing with her lover in front of me, I replied that he was an ex-lover, and that started a conversation." "I'm right? Is Shepard a former lover?" "Of course, ex." She was silent for a couple of seconds and then added, "He doesn't want to be an ex." He spent the whole dance trying to persuade me to see him again. I made it clear that this would never happen. Did Jessica know? I wonder how. Men are chatting. Andy is working with your three ex-lovers. I'm sure he learned from one of them or all of them at once. But why did he tell Jessica about this? They don't keep secrets from each other. According to her, they have an open marriage, and everyone can have fun on the side as long as they do not hide it from the other and always return home. Andy told Jessica he was going to court you, and she said she hoped he could do it. Why did she tell you this? She thinks that if he can have you, then she can have me. This bitch. Stay away from you, or I'll hurt her. She fell silent, and then asked, could she get you? Only if Andy managed to seduce you. No way, and there are several reasons for this. Some. First of all, I would rather die than break my vows. Secondly, I want to advance my career, and if I sleep with Andy, everyone will think I'm trying to advance through bed. Third, in light of the current situation with harassment and discrimination, if I slept with Andy and got promoted, someone might file a complaint. And finally, I just don't like him. My opinion of him was formed when he ran after every skirt, despite the fact that he had a woman like Jessica at home. Finding out that she didn't care didn't change my opinion. It still seems slippery to me. Does this bother you? Why should this bother me? Maybe you were hoping I'd give you a chance to try that sex bomb. I won't deny that she turns me on, as indeed is Bala's wife. But when it comes to sex bombs, I already have one, and I'm completely satisfied with it as long as it remains mine and only mine. Then you won't get to try any of them. I admit, before the wedding I was quite uninhibited, but I felt that I owed you for what you were going to do to me. She paused and then added, I'll tell you one thing. Jessica was right. When you try threesome or foursome sex and you like it, you always want to repeat it. I want it again, but the only man who can be there is you. Then you're out of luck, my little sex bomb, because I'm not like that. But now you understand that after all this talk about sex, I'm horny as hell, and you'll have to work hard as soon as we get home. That suits me. And they lived happily ever after. Or not. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to